Morena, welcome to our Policy and Projects Committee meeting for Wednesday, the 7th of August 2024. I'll open with a Karakia Tīmatanga. Mai te pai mōna raro ki te tai, mai te awa tonga raro ki te awa raki, tēnei te hapuriri, awhi ai e taratahi, whānau, hara mai te tōki, haumi e, hui e, apologies. His Worship the Mayor.
Closing tabs.
And Jeff is an apology, isn't he? Do we have any further apologies? Oh, can I move on a second for those? Thank you, Councillor Cherry-Campbell and Councillor Ayling. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Conflicts of interest? Public forum? No that I know of. Confirmation of the minutes? Everyone happy with those?
Yep.
Happy to move that they're inaccurate. Thank you, Councillor Gallen. All in favour?
Aye.
Yes. Right, report. 6.1, major projects update, and welcome to Johannes, who's filling in for Jeff today.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, councillors. And I'm also filling in for Christy today. So anyway, I'm going to take the report as read and just point out a few things. So as you can see, the Lincoln Road sewer main is progressing well. The improvement in weather has meant that we're pumping much less. Obviously, 2 weeks ago when we had the rain spell, water tables were still high. In those events, we're still pumping a lot. But all in all, it's going relatively well. We're making good progress on the Wainawa process water project. With services being located, we've got the permissions from Kiwi Rail, and they're busy with the welding testing at the moment on the actual pipes. Then we're also getting ready for the solar project down at Dalefield at Gallons Road. So we're just finalising things with the network operators in how we put the excess electricity back into the network and how we distribute that across the network. That I take it there will be a few questions.
Questions? Councillor Della.
Thank you. The sewer network renewal in Lincoln Road, I see there's a completion or sewer and lateral connections by October. Is that the total job finished, or is there more to do after that?
My understanding is that will include all the laterals as well. Yeah. So that would be the completion of the project.
Okay, and it's going to come in within budget, basically.
Yes, so it's within the approved budgets of the LTP, and yes.
Thank you.
So just supplementary to that, Johannes, I had a question around. I just wanted to confirm a few things around this project, because I was under the impression that this project was from Victoria Street to Belvedere. This project under the 2.1 million budget.
Yes.
But in the report, it's being stated in there is the budget is between Pembroke and Victoria.
It's just saying what's been completed so far, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's going a total meterage of 364 metres for the project.
My understanding was exactly the same as yours, and I will confirm that. that it is in fact up to Belvedere.
Yeah, and just around the meterage, because I mean the meterage between Pembroke and Victoria is only about 250 metres. So there's just a bit of confusion for me around some of the things that are
About the lengths and then just confirming the extent of the project.
Yeah.
My understanding is also that I'm also on the same page that we're going all the way to Belvedere, tying up to where we stopped with the Taverner sewer main.
Yeah.
That'd be 364 metres, wouldn't
I
it?
read it.
it's over there.
I think it's probably how it's worded, because I actually read it, they've completed 195 metres, kind of, and then out of the plan 346, the entire, and I think how I read it was that the 195 metres is the entire distance between Victoria and Pembroke, is how I actually read it.
Quite a bit more between Victoria and Belvedere Road than 364 metres.
Let me confirm that.
The next question I had, Johannes, was just around the solar project. Has there been any concern raised? I don't know if Fish and Game would raise this, or just around the proximity of the solar panels to the bird life. Just thinking about glare and sunlight and the birds thinking that they're landing on the reservoirs, but they're actually landing on a solar panel.
So we did part of the resource consent. We did a environmental impact assessment, and no concerns. Those concerns weren't, or those risks weren't identified as significant.
Yeah. Councillor Ayling.
I have a few questions. My first one was with regards to the delay in the long-term plan. I wonder if you could just let us know if there's been any major disruptions to our major projects because of it.
The delay in the LTP has only affected projects that is in new projects in year one of the proposed LTP. Projects that have been in flight, like 1 hour or the renewals, that's just continuing on. Because of so for the renewals, there's still a year 4 budget for renewals. Obviously, if the LTP does not go ahead, then we'll have to cut that short. However, we anticipate that we'll just go on. Projects like the procurement and design of the headworks, that hasn't been progressed. So the only impact is that we haven't started that yet.
Yeah.
And we won't start any of the LTP year 1 projects until the LTP is adopted.
And none of the projects that are delayed are particularly time sensitive. There's nothing that you're concerned about.
It's obviously would have preferred to get onto it sooner rather than later. But worst case scenario, there might be a carry forward at the end of the financial year if we did not complete it, a project that has been started. But that would be the risk. There's nothing that's particularly time sensitive. Something that would be considered time sensitive would be the resealing and rehabs of the roading network. But that's only planned for beginning of October really to start. So we're preparing as if we're going ahead. If we don't go ahead with the larger sealing program, then again just be cut back, and we would have completed pre-seal treatments for the next financial year.
Okay. Awesome, thank you.
Councillor Della.
If Johannes thinks Wainoa water process water project, I noticed there's quite a few activities already being completed, and one of them being tree removal. What happened to the trees that came out of there, and is the Lions Club always looking for wood? Has it been allocated or not? No conflict.
So I'll need to check in. Normally we would try and offset the removal of trees with the arborist. But I can check if there's any leftover firewood. We will talk to all charities in the region.
Right now. Just the Lions Club.
Which goes back to the community.
Yes.
Definitely does.
Another question associated with that process, the Waianawa Processed Water Project. Is it possible for governance for a visit to be arranged to the site?
Yes, definitely.
Just to, because I've never been to the site, so it'd be just good to have a look around and see what's there and just where things are going to happen and so forth, if that's possible. I don't know if anyone else is interested. I'm just interested in.
Yeah.
Yep, we'll take an action and arrange a field trip. Yep.
Thank you.
That will also be a good opportunity to see where the proposed extension of Norman Ave,
Right.
the road project, see what's happening there.
Brandon?
I also had questions on the Waianawa processed water. I wonder if, Johannes, you could give us an update. Sorry, I was away a couple of weeks ago when I think you had a workshop about it, but if you could explain to the committee change in position that JNL has regarding this spend.
Thank you, Councillor Ayling. Initially, throughout the project, it has always been a risk that JNL could pull out of the project and not take the volume of water that we anticipate that they would use. Over the last few weeks, they have made their position quite clear that they have no intention to connect to the Waianawa processed water source, which takes away the biggest consumer that we anticipated, and it's the biggest water user in the Waianawa area. So that is their position.
Mm-hmm. I remember, I think an email was flicked around saying that the mayor was planning to visit with yourself or Jeff. Has that happened?
I believe Mayor Ruamāhanga and Jeff met with Carl Burling around that position. I don't think any of their positions has changed following that meeting.
Right. I'm not what the process is with regards to decisions that council have made, but I wonder if it's worth the committee making a recommendation that it goes back to a council vote again, because the project has changed so much in terms of the risk profiles now being triggered. I'm not sure what the process is with regards to councils looking at decisions again, if one of the chair or yourself could advise.
So my understanding, Chair, that needs to be a recommendation that needs to be moved.
I agree. I actually thought that did this come to council?
Yeah, we discussed the risk of exactly this and still concluded that the project would proceed.
We'll continue.
So it was it was just raised at a workshop. But with no decision, it was just an update on this is what happened.
So the initial meeting that I know we've been talking about it for about a year now, but from my memory, and I looked back through article in the Times Age about it, and it said that the initial decision was one that was there were three of us who voted against the project and the rest voted in favour. I just wonder, when it's such a big spend and it's such a major project and there was a split amongst the table, I wonder if it's worth us, for the sake of assurance.
I don't think once a project has been approved, even if it was some councillors voted against it, if there was a vote that actually moved that a project was going forward and has been included in the budgets, that you can't then pull the pin on it, I don't believe. But you might have more knowledge as well, Dale.
It has materially changed, so I wondered if it's prudent to look at it again.
Well, we've been kept abreast of any changes, and at each time Jeff and staff have sought direction from council, and we've given direction that all things being equal, it continues. What you say is right, Councillor Cherry-Campbell. At governance, we set the budgets and set the risk profile, if you like, and it becomes delegated authority for staff to proceed with the project. I understand what you say, that and it disappointed us, but I guess what I also took out of that last discussion was the response from JNL is no right now, but doesn't mean no never. In other words, things change. And we also took into account the fact that there's other businesses coming on stream all the time in Wainawa, and it was kind of an investment for the industrial estate, irrespective of. I think the issue was around whether Kanoa still was contributing.
Funding.
Yeah.
If there was
Interested party changed their mind.
yeah, and that was confirmed, was it not?
So Kanua has verbally confirmed that because their funding doesn't change, the risk sits with council. They will, as long as we deliver what we said we'll deliver, they don't really care how it's being used afterwards.
My concern is that it's not just a risk anymore; it's eventuated, and I think that changes the ground on which we're making that decision on. So I would say it needs to be relooked at.
Do you want us to take that as an action that it goes back to Jeff and Jeff brings back something to us? Because I know that we have discussed it. I thought it was at a meeting, but you've just said it was at a workshop where we were told the figures, the extra costs that would be involved if JNL pulled out of it.
Because the discussion around that was around the future proofing for the expansion of Wainawa, and JNL wasn't the complete crux. Kanoa was the linchpin, and it was a majority decision around the table, which from a governance point of view, when there is a majority decision, we kind of need to, whichever way it goes, we do need to take that. But
I do get where Councillor Ayling's coming from though, because there has been a change to the impact that will impact ratepayers.
Yeah,
JNL pulling out of it. So.
Yeah, I think there was an obvious link where people would say, see what we were doing this for. Whereas that's gone now, and I mean, it's been reported that management didn't support this decision and they didn't advise us to do this decision. And now we know that project isn't supported by the business that was going to be benefiting from it, and council's still soldiering on ahead. I think it looks like we're making a decision purely for the Kanoa funding, and it's going to impact ratepayers significantly. And I just don't know if that's a top priority for the council right now.
I think the discussions that Mayor Mark and Jeff have had with JNL, though, they've passed on information that the local water done well could impact JNL significantly with the potable water that they're receiving from us and District Council. So with the costs involved in it, so they could have big changes that they're going to have to make to their plant to accommodate.
I think maybe the action from this discussion is the Mayor and Chief Executive
Update us all.
should make have a conversation and make a decision around either confirming the project or not, or otherwise, or bringing it back. Given that so much equipment's been purchased and so much investment has happened, even though staff early on hit that one of those gates and said they weren't recommending it, we overruled that as governance and said no, the greater good prevails, and this is a project we want to continue with. I thought that was the last opportunity we had, regardless of what changed in the future, all things being equal, that we were committed to the project. If the Mayor and Chief Executive, it's up to the other bosses. They need to tell us what they want us to do.
Yeah, and I don't understand the correct process and bringing things back to council, so I appreciate that. But I just think we've committed so much money, and I hate to waste money, but I'd hate to waste more money on a project that isn't going anywhere. It's not benefiting anyone when we could be putting that money into something that would help more people in town. So that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I suspect looking at the pictures, that horse is bolted really. Been a lot of money spent already, I would think, and a lot more committed, a whole bunch of money spent on design. That's probably.
And whilst it's not immediate benefits to one, it's future proofing. And I think as part of governance and looking forward to the future, our role, and I get what you're saying, like I'm also am not in favour of wasting money or anything, but this is, it's, as Steve Gallen said in one of our meetings, it's never going to get any cheaper. And with the projected growth in the future, we need to be looking forward as well, which is what previous councils did with the reservoirs that we now have at the south end of town, which a lot of people didn't think was a great idea. But now we have those reservoirs because there was an investment made looking forward to the future, and we have a 35-year consent. So this is, in my mind, a little bit similar, looking at future proofing for bringing in industrial into that area that, you know, is zoned to growth. And I think we need to also have that in mind when we're thinking about decisions that we make.
I feel as though myself, anyway, a site visit would be great to get everyone's head around what's happening and a bit of expert advice as what's happening, and then have more of a discussion. But I think a site visit would sort of give us more idea where we're going, because things have changed a little bit, but I still think that future proofing is the Wainoa industrial area, you know.
I just question to you, Johannes, do you think this horse is bolted in terms of how much money's gone into the project? Would we be more prudent to stop it here or continue down this track, to be frank?
Thank you for that question. So the project budget is $2.67 million. We've spent around $150,000. The major works hasn't started. We are planning to start major works. So it depends on your view on, say, $200,000 versus $2.7 million. So,
But of that, 1.7 is coming from Carterton.
Yep, that is correct. So,
Greater Wellington, Wellington NZ have also contributed.
You mean Wits?
and
Wellington NZ.
Okay, I thought it was Wits. Sorry.
I don't think I should make the call of whether the horse is bolted. I can say there's a horse.
Stationary at the moment.
Can we leave this as an action for Jeff and Mayor Ron to come back to us? And maybe they can allay further their conversations with J&L and
Sounds good.
and yeah, whether we should progress. And I mean, things will be progressing further on the project. I don't know. Do you want this brought back at the next council meeting, or?
I mean, as soon as possible would be better. I mean, even an email in the interim between now and the council meeting just to update us on how that conversation went would be helpful.
I'll take an action for Ron and Jeff.
Any further questions? Okay, we have one recommendation, and that's we receive a report. The mover. So, thank you, Councillor Dillon. So, thank you, Councillor Laurence. All in favour?
Aye.
No,
Against? Carried. Thank you, Johannes and Christine. Okay, next we will Savish. Now, waste management and minimisation update.
Kia ora koutou, Chair, Councillors and colleagues. I take the report as read, but just wanted to clarify and point out some important points here for everyone. As you can see in the report that for the Wellington Region's waste management and minimization plan, we are currently monitoring the implementations for the local actions, and we keep updating as we go. And in the last meeting, we have discussed about how we have applied for a funding regarding the feasibility of organics curbside collection. So we are currently at the second phase of the application, where we are just awaiting the deed of the funding to be signed. And as soon as we get any update, we'll definitely inform everyone else. And going back to the service request, I just wanted to make everyone know that recently we have updated our service request patterns. It was more of a manual services where the customer service team would take calls and emails of the residents and apply any sort of request which is possible, but now it has been all high tech and advanced. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank you to our wonderful customer service team. They have been doing an absolutely fantastic job. And for the next step, we are currently with the help of South Warrapa and Marston Council's waste officers. We are currently looking for and considering procurement options for our shared waste service contract, and we'll definitely update as we have any sort of progress in that. And if you go to the transfer station, it's currently been updated and it's still trying to update as much as we can in the upcoming times. And the next sort of updates for us would be to do the community educations and business waste audits. And lastly, the big daffodil festivals, the festival to come. So I have interacted with the Parks and Reserve team and the events team for last year's feedback. And I'm working with the event center team to make sure that what we can do to try to update the waste management for this year's festival. So I'm up for any questions if anyone have any.
That's Sharice.
Or you just got one.
Adela.
Thank you, Sharice. The feasibility study grant funding, you say you're waiting for it to be signed. Is it looking positive? Is there any hiccups or?
It is looking.
That's good.
Councillor Deller, they're just going through the process. So they've indicated that we've secured the funding. So the contractual part is, from past experience, probably just formality.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
I question on the same one, this organic waste feasibility. I'm trying to remember, this isn't the same as the one that got the grant, is it? It's a different initiative.
It's a different. This feasibility study, grant funding is applied for all the three council shared, and Carterton is leading it. The one which you're talking about is from what Carterton has provided for the local functions. Yeah, it's different.
And has your team had any communications with them in regards to how they might plug into this in the end? Because obviously this will be the bigger project.
We did had meet the good Warrapa people, and as we say, like this is a feasibility funding, grant funding which we have applied. So working together with such community works is actually a part of the feasibility. So we are taking it into consideration.
Cool.
They will also share some data with us that will feed into our larger feasibility study.
Awesome. Any indication of where it would be based? In terms of towns, you don't have to be specific.
That's something which I really need to have a look around. But as I'm aware that if it's from Carterton, that it should be in Carterton. But for the particular place, I would definitely come back to you with that option. Yeah.
And maybe if I just can add, part of the feasibility is looking at where's the most feasible option, where is there land available, but also what is the proximity to the volume. That's why you do a feasibility study, so that you don't put it in the wrong spot. So once that's progressed, then we will bring that back to council, to the committee.
Thank you.
Just a comment. I think about this quite often, and just looking at the service requests, it's prompted me. When I drive around on a Monday, I just want to acknowledge the service providers. You know, so few service requests. When you think about how many bins, you know, in the Wairarapa wind and people parking in front of bins and so forth, it really is a seamless service. I get, as an elected member, I get no phone calls about, you know, when you think of how many bins get collected each day, I see the guy on the motorbike coming around and checking bins and writing notes, and, you know, they've obviously got it working really well because it's a great service for us urban people. And as I say, when bins tip over, they clean up, they really go above and beyond, I reckon. So just a comment.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll definitely pass it on to the contractors.
And as I say, I saw on Monday too, there was like lots and lots of cars parked, and obviously the truck was going to have trouble, and they were moving the bins down to where I thought, because people would just park in front of the bins.
Yeah.
making it hard for them.
They do what it takes to
Yeah.
to satisfy the customers. When you look at so few service requests versus the number of bins get collected each Monday, I think it's a credit to everybody involved.
And just to add, with the ongoing project on Lincoln Road, it's been fantastic. The traffic management contractors have been moving the bins to each end, and that type of thing just it's really, really good. They're going outside of their what's expected. So I had a question, Savish, just around Wellington City Council and what you've mentioned in your report. Can you just give a little bit of background, because just around the decision of Wellington City Council and their pullback on the implementation plan and so forth, just so those around the table have an understanding, because it held everything up for the regions implementing the actual plan. So
Thank you for the question, Chair. So what Deputy Mayor is referring to is that Wellington City Council recently came to, I won't say a conclusion, but more of a comment that they were not fully satisfied with the regional implementation plan and the advisor who was working on the WMMP implementations. So that's why it has been a back and forth meetings with the officers of the Wairarapa and as well as all the regional Wellington councils. It's currently, as I mentioned in the report, is currently on hold, but at the same time, we are in constant communication within the officers as well as to what is taking so long in the process, because they wanted the implementation plan, the regional one, not the local, from that advisor to actually extend for a little bit further. And that is something which every other officers of the regional councils as well have decided and are trying to communicate in sense that what is required for us, what is beneficial for us, or what is it really required that we should extend the advisory or not, because if it's only for Wellington City Council, they should do it. So these sort of, I wouldn't say a conflict of interest, but a little bit of communication that's happening, because in the end, every council and every officer want to have the best possible outcome of the advisory or the external contract that they are trying to portray. So we're currently working on it, and we're currently having as much communication as we can from the Wellington Council as well as the advisor as well. Me with the South Wairarapa Council officer and the Marston Council officer, waste officer, we are currently in communication, I would say weekly in these scenarios. And as soon as the things are looking positive as well, because Wellington City Council is also accepted the fact that they can't deny and they can't delay the process as longer as they can be. So we soon will definitely get an update, and I'm pretty sure and confident that the regional implementation plan will soon be on board.
yeah, it was really difficult. We'd approved the implementation plan, the region-wide implementation plan as it was for our waste minimisation meeting, and Wellington decided they were pulling back on it at the following meeting, and it just put the whole thing into jeopardy. We were the mayors and deputy mayors, who some were in attendance, their representatives, and they were just shocked at Wellington were going about it. So, be good to move forward on that.
Yep.
Thanks, Shavish. Do we have any further questions? Okay, we have one recommendation, and that's that we received the report. So we have a vote on. Thank you, Councillor Williams, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Newman. All in favour?
Aye.
Thanks, Gary. Thank you, Shavish. Appreciate it. Well, thanks. Next, we welcome Laurence. 6.3 consents update.
Thank you. I'll take the report as read, and it is just a brief sort of update. A lot of going on is discussions with the regional council and gathering additional information for the water races to answer the questions that have come back. Hopefully the water races will be going through this week, and we were trying to get a report in conjunction with Marston District Council, because they are going for their own consent
from the Wainawa River, which also is in close proximity to the Taratahi water intake. And they're doing a much wider scope. So one of the things we need to comment on is the cumulative effect. So the Marston intake and the Taratahi are two of the larger ones in the general area. Any questions?
Councillor Williams.
Under local water done well, how many of those consents would still be ours?
As in the council?
Yeah.
So I would say the water race, the landfill.
Yeah.
And the Wainawa swamp cleaning, but that should be tied up in the water race generally. So those are the main ones.
I guess.
And sorry, and depending on what the decision is around stormwater.
Yeah, I suppose reading through this and reading things like nitrate levels are still within limits, however change in legislation could compromise that. I'm just wondering, I know we're legislatively required to maintain consents and to get consents, but given we're in this transition phase of uncertainty, how much do we spend to, what am I trying to ask? Is there any merit in slowing down to let the local water done well catch up and overtake to prevent us spending a lot of money that really we're just going to be handing over? I don't know. Is that?
If I may speak to that, it's a good question, Councillor Williams. Our position from the start, when we started working on reforms, has always been that we want to do the best that we can for our community. And whenever reform takes place, or whether it was water reform or local water done well, that when we hand it over, we will hand it over in the best possible condition that we can. Due to with these consents, it's such a timely process of getting it approved and getting it over the line. Officer's recommendation would be to continue with the consents and get it sorted, because we're also very aware that soon it'll be another election cycle, and the local water's done well might change the name again. So we don't know that, but what we do know is that we want to provide our customers with the best water services possible. So
Well answered, thank you.
And if I could just quickly comment, Councillor, is that it's largely irrelevant in terms of the nitrates, because the Frederick Street, that's just a risk, which would be further treatment. So how we're trying to mitigate that is the renewal of the Kaipaitanga, which has already expired, and it's already been 10 years.
Yeah.
So slowing down anymore is probably not really going to make too much of a difference.
No, that's fine. I just didn't,
Yeah.
I just didn't, at the 11th hour, didn't want to be captured with a major spend on something that is no change in water quality, but a change in measurement or legislation that flicks us into spending more money than we anticipate. That's all. So it's really just you people have got your ear to the ground. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Just on that, Laurence, in your under the Kaipaitanga to service water take, you've gotten the risk requesting a 20-year, however, we're still waiting a decision as a risk. Further down, you've got that they're suggesting we're only going to get a 5-year. That's a significant
risk. Yes. Where that is part of that discussion around, because it is a surface water take, during low flow conditions, we're only permitted, or as part of the step down, the health needs of people. So as part of that discussion, I'm saying that because we've got the two different sources, even though from the allocation point of view, they're coming from the same source, they are treated differently, that we'll be blending it. So even though we might only be able to take the health needs of people without any consideration for businesses or anything like that, we should still be able to get it and cope with it. And whether or not they view that as acceptable to give us a longer term consent or do put that restriction on it. But that is a very much advice from the policy and not what the consenting officer is sort of talking about. The consenting officer is sounding a little bit more positive than the very black and white advice that based on, because the Mangaterere is, from an allocation point of view, is 380% over allocated. Yeah. Yeah.
So probably to add to that also, that has just been, how can I say it, informal comments from an officer. That's not an official position from Greater Wellington. And if they were to take that position, then we would progress and take further steps and obviously go through quite a process of working with that.
Yeah. And I think there's a few sort of ways that might be managed, as in potentially in a condition that it's a review after 5 years, because it is that allocation timeframe is in the rules. But potentially it's because it is for the drinking water of the town, and being able to take it would be to help with the health needs of people. Okay. I think there are ways we could potentially work around that.
A couple of things. This comes up from time to time. Expiry 2013.
Yeah.
I mean, do you get to the point where it becomes meaningless? So we're 11 years over. Does no one do anything about that? Like, is there no regulatory? Is there no big policeman out there saying you're 5 minutes late, give it back, or?
I
didn't put that very well, but I think it's anybody, any layman looking at this like me, would they, what the hell?
I thought it was a typo the first time I saw this reply, but that must be 2023.
No.
There'd be councils throughout New Zealand that would probably have to close their towns if they the regional councils followed through with those dates.
So does it not make up the whole system?
Oh, what?
That, Councillor Laurence, that is part of what Te Mata Arawai is looking at. So potentially, and I think it would be looking at on a risk base. And I do know that there are a number of wastewater consents that are expired. Featherston would be a good example, where they're going through and those considerations around affordability are coming into a major bit of play.
Other question, apart from that little rant, was the landfill. We're talking about discussion, 2016 expiry, so it's pretty recent, this one. 2014 application on hold. We're proposing to desludge those 3 ponds over the next 3 years. Does that situation there with that expired consent, is that material in terms of whether we can actually do that?
It's not likely to be material. It's probably just likely to be, if we can't dispose of it to that landfill, it'd be additional costs that we haven't budgeted for in terms of that disposal route.
So we haven't finalised how we're going to do the desludging. We know that we are going to do desludging, and what we've committed to is that the budget that has been approved or is in the proposed LTP, we're going to work towards that and desludge as much as we can with that. If that requires us to take the material to somewhere, then we will, then obviously that will impact the percentage of sludge that we can remove. But so the consent really is pertaining to if we were to dispose of it in that area. So we could still, there's various other options that we will consider as part of the sludging.
And depending on how we do end up desludging and how long we store it on site and how dry it gets, because when it comes out of the pond, it's going to be 95% water. So even getting it up to 10%, you're reducing the volume by at least half. So leaving it a little bit longer, and potentially there's a way you could encapsulate it and even just use it as sort of building material or mixing, depending on the quality. So without sort of those further tests, building material. Yeah. Roads and that. And then surely houses. No, I was meaning roading building materials.
The system I've seen was pumping them into these huge bladders.
Yeah.
And the sheer weight of the material compresses the water out through the bladder, and what you end up with is it's almost like brick consistency of solid. After about 10 years, you've got to have the space to store the bladders, but once it becomes inert and solid, as you say, it's basically topsoil. Like it's pretty solid.
So other councils spread that in forestry. I know there's councils that's using it in organically decompose of it within, so tying into the organic waste space as well. So there's various options of dealing with it. We haven't done that part yet. As soon as that budget is formally approved, then we'll start working at it.
And realistically, for the landfill consent, I don't really see there going to be too much change for the new consent for what we're already doing. In terms of we're just monitoring to see what effects or if they're having any effects on the environment. So it'd be just a continuation pretty much of what we're already doing.
And do you have any time frame of when you think that will be an active consent for the landfill?
For the landfill, we've been going back and forth to the regional council about 6 months trying to get somebody to own it. So because it's not a high priority and it's only monitoring, they're dealing with other higher priorities such as I think southern landfills at the moment. It's just a shortage of council officers in that.
As long as it's in train, we can't be accused of being non-compliant. So we're playing the game. We're just not in any hurry to get a result.
Yeah. And to put it into context, I was at a Water NZ meeting a couple of weeks ago, and they're sort of saying within 5 years, 70% of the wastewater consents are coming up for renewal around the country. Yeah.
Thank you, Steve. Just a couple of questions, Laurence. Back to the territory, the water race consents, etc. I see you had a meeting planned with regional council, and obviously you've had that because we're just about to the signing stage, which is really cool. Can you just give us an outline of what you discussed there, and was it, as said down below, it was more about the effects on streams and groundwater discharges, etc. Was that for the water races as well, obviously?
Correct, yeah.
So,
so that was around further looking at those cumulative effects, because, for instance, the Taratahi, there's about 30 or 40 different discharges, some going to Wainawa, some going to the Ruamāhanga, some going to Parkvale and that. So using what evidence we do have or what has been collected over time for the ecologists to use that and come up with a bit of an assessment to show that cumulatively compared to the water races are having a minor or less than minor effect compared to a lot of the contamination will already have ended up in the environment because it'll be land runoff as much as anything. So
yeah, in some cases, the water's actually going in discharged better condition than it is going into the water race system, isn't it? So,
not as in the receiving environment is in a worse state in terms of a lower class. Yes, correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thank you. So no, it's all positive stuff, basically.
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Laurence, you mentioned the nitrates and potential for, so I'm guessing to change those levels.
Mhm.
Do we still have that in our long-term plan budgets for the nitrates?
Yes,
We did,
yes.
just in case that does change.
So we've got a project for nitrate management, I believe, in year 4, 5, and 6 of the LTP. Any further questions, discussion? We have one recommendation, and that's that we received the report. I'm happy to move that. We have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Williams. All in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you, Laurence. 6.4, Ruamāhanga roads and corridor access. Johannes, you speaking to that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to, before I talk to that report, just want to clarify a matter in the major projects update that you questioned the distance of the pipeline. It is in fact 580 meters, not 364 meters. So good question. Well picked up.
Just supplementary to that, seeing as you raised it, does that?
Budget apply.
The budget still applies.
Yeah,
Yep.
but the timings. So what are they going to complete by October?
So
Is it the whole
it's
thing?
the whole thing. There was a typo with the meter. The 364 was the mistake, not the timing or the budget.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm going to take the report as read. This is the report focuses on activities up until the end of June, and I just to kind of explain why we see it as a significant achievement to land the LTP for the roading in the way that we did. NZTA's LTP or NLTP works in a three-year cycle, and within that 3-year cycle, we're allowed to move. We can move budgets forwards and carry forward, similar to us. But at the end of that 3rd year, we lose the ability to carry forward any NZTA funding. So meaning that whatever we don't use, we give that back. So over the last, since April, well, the last financial year, but really from April, a lot of effort has gone in to make sure that we land our roading LTP, which was quite significant if we think of the volume of emergency works that was done over and above our normal roading program. But the team has done a fantastic job, the Ruamāhanga Roads team and Fulton Hogan, the contractor, to deliver the scope of works and to land those budgets and seamlessly just transition the next day into the next LTP and just going forward. So that's why we're very pleased with those achievements. And with that, I'll give it to you for questions.
Thank you, Johannes. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Johannes. Are you in a position to update us on, I know you were waiting for the NZTA outcome for funding commitments for the next year. Are you in a position to update us on that?
NZTA has communicated indicative budgets. They have on the GPS, they've restructured our working categories a little bit. So we've now have the maintenance operations bucket, pothole prevention bucket, and then a walking and cycling budget. Our late for the first two, which is the priority, we received more or less 90% of what we've asked for, which is fantastic. Obviously, that hasn't been officially confirmed, but that's what they're indicating. And then for 36%. So for Carterton, walking and cycling means footpath maintenance and footpath renewals. So they're indicating we'll have 36% of the budgets that we've requested for through our asset management plan. So meaning that we have two options. So we either reduce our maintenance program for the next 3 years, or we can address that through unsubsidized funds, everything's been confirmed. Further to that, we are still awaiting their NZTA's position on low cost, low risk projects. Even though we don't have significant projects in the low cost, low risk, we do have some in there. And once there's advice on that, we will need to come up with how we respond to that and adjust probably our intervention strategy for maintenance.
Thank you. That's really disappointing to hear. A 60-odd% decrease. I mean, we went through our long-term planning based on certain assumptions, and we undertook that forward program, especially around footpath. You know, we made a commitment to every street having a footpath on at least one side. You know, these were real community benefits that we invested in, and to have NZTA pull 2/3 of that budget at the last minute. I mean, we're now August and we're into the financial year. That is really disappointing. I mean, and then councils get criticised by the general public for not keeping pace with their expectations. Well, NZTA with the far rate and with their funding partnership, that's a central government, local government commitment to assisting our communities' satisfaction. I think that's appalling what they've done. I mean, I understand from a high level government saying there's no money and rah-de-rah, but we should have been told from NZTA a lot earlier around what their intention was likely to be, so that we could, because we've gone and told the public that they can expect footpaths on one side of every street. They can expect footpath upgrades. They can expect, well, now we're in the invidious position of having to find more money that we don't have from the ratepayer's pocket just to meet those expectations, because NZTA have pulled the carpet.
So very good statement. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, I
think the challenge also for us in that is that our funding request was not for out of the ordinary, bespoke, nice to have facilities. The piece that's been reduced is really maintenance and renewal of existing assets. The new footpaths is part of the would be under the low cost, low risk. So basically, if we take the same principle of our asset management approach is that we will be deferring maintenance now, and deferred maintenance obviously results in bell waves in your in future maintenance. So yeah, it's really not a positive position to be in.
Well, I mean, it's ironic that NZTA spend millions on things nobody's asking for.
Yeah.
Like reduced road speeds and God knows how many impediments from here to Masterton, and yet the things that people have a modest level of expectation for, they step away from. It's hard to
which is still adding to the road safety and everything by keeping people walking off the roads and non-footpaths. So
yeah, well, that's the whole purpose of walking and cycling. That whole commitment to, you know, cycleways and all alternative modes of transport and all of this sort of thing, and yet they're continuing to overfund potholes and wire rope. Rant over. Sitting next to you, like
that. So further to your comments, Councillor Williams, I have comments around the far rate as well, and I don't feel it goes far enough with our rural roads, and I know that we're looking into Wairua Council managed to get passed, but those councils that are going through forestry right now, which we are, and we're seeing significant damage on one of our roads, Craigielee Road, and it's just ongoing, and we're having to continually spend money out there, which must go well over and above what's expected. To me, there should be an increase in the fire rate to cover that, because road user charges, the trucks going backwards and forwards and so forth.
That's right. The government's getting the road user charges. They're just not spending them.
Well, it's not coming to us.
Around.
It's our ratepayers are getting smacked again over and over and over for the upkeep of this road. And yeah, I don't agree with it. It's got to be changes. But Councillor Ayling?
Just one question with regards to this 30-something% on the footpaths, 36% on the footpaths. What does that mean for the long-term plan that we'll be adopting next month? Have you had to change figures and pull things out, or it's going to stay the same and the number's going to go up?
So because that advice only came in Friday afternoon, and then it hasn't been made, that's not official, it's only indicative. We're not proposing to make any changes to the LTP. We also didn't propose any changes to the LTP as a result of the indicative funding on the operations and the pothole prevention funds. The reason for that is that because NZTA has got a 3-year view, and we're very good at delivering our maintenance program, where that there is an opportunity to get a top up in year 2 and year 3 if other councils can't deliver their maintenance programs. So that's quite a normal occurrence that that NZTA would give us the opportunity that if we can get the council share, then we can get a top up. Now we've already agreed to council share, so if that opportunity presents itself, then we will we'll go after it and try and get the top up. Worst case scenario, and we don't get the top up, we won't spend if we don't get the confirmation. So then we don't spend those monies.
Thank you.
Simple question for you. Of the overall expenditure of the last 3 years for the roading budget, roughly what percentage was on rural roads versus urban roads or residential roads?
So you've got to look at it in terms of the split of our network, because it's probably equal. So the budget is split across the network regardless of whether it's urban or rural. The split of our town, and I don't have the percentage off the top of my head, but a larger portion of our network is rural. So I can get you the exact percentages of how that is spent. But it's really, if we have more rural roads, then we're spending more of our budget on that. So also our rural roads are more vulnerable. So most of emergency works are spent on rural roads. We don't, in the last 3 years, the emergency events that we had didn't really impact the urban area. However, it impacted the rural area quite significantly.
4.5 traffic services maintenance. This is just a little story for you, really, but it's quite exciting. Is it possible at the end of Chester Road where it meets Norfolk Road, can we get a sign that says which way to Masterton? Because 10 o'clock on Sunday night, a woman with 4 kids in her car turned up at our place saying, "Where the hell am I?" I said, "Well, you're almost an Otaki." But the road gets bumpier from here.
Yes, Councillor Laurence. We can look into a sign. That
You don't want to see it.
that was the first time that that concern has been raised with us.
Well, it's the second time for me. When I was coming in a week or so ago, and there was a guy parked at the end of Chester Road, and he waved at me, so I stopped, and he said, "Which way to Masterton? I've just been walking up in the Mangatariri, and I don't know how to get to." So
Well, I'm glad he got out of the Mangaterere because we can't find Masterton.
it's obviously been made a little bit worse because of the detour at the moment.
There used to be a sign there pointing Carterton, Marston, Mount Holsworth, and I think I always called it the 7K sign
Yeah,
because it was 7 either way, I think, from memory or
So want to
something.
send people into Carterton.
That was with
Let's not worry about Masterton after that.
they just come from me.
Good.
Johannes, I had a question around, Kiwi Rail have communicated that they're shutting down trains over the summer for about 43 days or something. Is that an opportunity for council to get in along the rail corridor and clean out some of our stormwater drains that haven't been able to be accessed?
That is a good question, and yes, we had a meeting with Kiwi Rail to align our work programs with them. So during that time when they're doing the upgrades to all the urban crossings, we are scoping those areas so that we can do all the maintenance in that area when they are there. Because the challenge for us in normal circumstances is that if we want to get within 100 meters of the rail, then we need to get a standover that's quite expensive. So the team has been looking into that, and we are planning for that.
Excellent. Thank you.
And cycleway work, like up Clearville and that sort of thing, was that going to take place?
I'm not too sure what's happening with the Clearville, the cycleway, Kiwi Rail, but we'll need Glenda to give an update on that.
Again, as Steve said, if there's no trains coming, that's the ideal opportunity to do some of the complementary work that we're planning.
Any further questions or discussion on item 6.4? Right. Okay. We have one recommendation, that's that we receive the report. Thank you, Councillor Cherry-Campbell, seconded by Councillor Ayling. All in favour? Against? Carried. Item 6.5, resource consent update. Welcome, Solitaire.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillors.
What here?
Good morning. This is our standard report updating on the resource consent. So we are getting a few more coming in, being processed, which the time is not ideal with all the work we're putting into the combined district plan, but Becca's pretty amazing at getting everything done and sent to me nice and early for a review so we can get them out. As always, I'm happy to answer questions on the consent, and if there's anything I'm not 100% sure of, I'm more than happy to take a note and come back to the elected members.
Good, but there's still activity happening out there in such a challenging environment.
Yes, and probably one thing I would just like to touch on, you'll notice that they're beginning to look a little bit different. We're giving the activity statuses of what it would be in the operative district plan versus what it is in the proposed district plan.
Yeah.
Because of where we are in the process, we actually have to assess under both plans. So it's more work. And the further the planning process gets through with the district plan, you start weighting them differently depending on the submissions received, the further submissions, the appeals, and you'll note that there's a few of them where it's non-complying under the operative district plan, yet it will be controlled or restricted discretionary under the new plan. So it's sort of showing that direction, particularly in your rural subdivisions, of recognising that we want to protect our rural land, but you're under 3 hectares and that, thinking it's not really productive land now. That's the land we should be allowing subdivision. And there is a comment in one of the subdivisions of the surplus farmhouse. And officers actually have put a submission out on the plan, as we are entitled to do, asking for some clarification around that, because the idea is that if you're subdividing up a surplus farmhouse, by default, that should actually read that there's more than one that you're taking off. And the rule talks about the land. You can't take off a surplus farmhouse if the balance land is vacant. But does a shed mean it's vacant? So we've had a couple where they've come in where it's actually quite legitimate. They're no longer wanting to farm, but they are wanting to retain their house. So they've subdivided off and the land's vacant, so it hasn't met that rule. But with an assessment, when you've got 120 something hectare balance that's going to continue to be farmed, you've got to have a little bit of pragmatism at the moment in this process.
Yeah.
And it's good to see the outcome is the consents have been granted, you know, so the message to people is if you get it right and work with us, you get the result.
As we've always been quite strong on, ring us, talk to us first, because we would rather not see consents come in our door that we have clearly indicated we couldn't support. Makes it very difficult for people, and we'd rather be upfront, and we don't want to see ratepayers spending money on consultants or application fees when we've clearly indicated that we can't find plan support.
It's good.
Councillor Ayling.
How much longer will you be having to deal with both of these plans? I was trying to go onto their website a few weeks ago, and it still seems like there's a little way to go before this is signed off.
Started the hearings
Hearing
yesterday.
stream one's gone, and there's 13 or 14 hearing streams going till May next year. It would be unlikely that we would get through a process like that and not have some appeals, which could get sorted at a mediation. There may be provisions that end up in the Environment Court. They're significantly large processes. But as it gets further down, after all the hearings, there'll be a decision version released. And then there'll be the appeals version, and it's just, we'll get to a point where it's 90% proposed plan, 10% operative, and then you just look at which plan does have the stronger objectives and policies as well.
Some plans never become operative in
Gosh.
10 years of which the time frame is on.
This is like the consents all over again.
We've set a fairly good precedent though in the past, so it's been a really robust process to date.
It's lengthy.
Getting close by the end of next year.
We got six hearing streams until the week
Then we'll start the next one.
of December.
Wow,
Is our last one for the year.
big body of work.
It is.
It is a lot of work,
It's,
a lot of reading.
it's probably a bit pointless, but I'm just vaguely curious. I mean, you've granted an approval for the council's solar farm down at Dalefield. I just wondered if there's some sort of conflict between.
We granted it because as a council, we have to grant consents.
Right.
But similar to any other resource consent that has been applied for CDC, such as our reservoirs, any of that work, the application is prepared by an independent consultant. The decision maker is not a council staff member. We put that out to a consultant to assess, make the recommendations, but by virtue of the delegations, somebody at CDC has to sign off that decision, and that's me. But we don't have anything to do with the report writing or the recommendations.
So it's nothing to do with how much money you had to escape.
Well, I had a question around, at the last council meeting, I raised about flood protection and that there was a little bit of an expectation on council out at Flat Point as such. And I asked the question around developers who were looking at developing land and whether there should be some kind of request to them that they provide flood protection of the properties that are going to be built on their land if it's within a flood zone as such. I mean, it's fine building a house up a certain level so that avoids floods, but everything else that just wondering how is there a way that that can be forced on the developers?
In an ideal world, it would be better to avoid building in floodplain or flood-prone areas. And your activity status that came in would get to like discretionary or restricted. So you would have the ability to look at how you address matters. I'm not 100% convinced or sure that we could request that a developer provides flood protection, because flood protection per se is a regional council function, not a district council function. Things like, you know, as you'd be aware of, you know, minimum height, mitigating that hydraulic neutrality, all of this is definitely coming up more in the district plan review, because, you know, we have much better data on where things are now than we did 10 years ago, 20 years ago. You're just limited as to what the access you can do.
It's noted on the limb, though, that you're in a floodplain.
Yeah.
So the expectation is that in extreme weather events, you're part of an overland flow path, which means if you put bark on your gardens, expect that to be on the neighbour's garden by the time the water goes down. That's, you know, that's what people have to expect. If you're going to put a garden shed at ground level, then your lawnmower's going to get washed.
Yeah, you know, I think we are quite lucky here in Carterton that there was that large process of the Mangatarere flood study area that's been going on for a number of years. And I do know that Deputy Mayor Cretney's been involved in that. And I think it's been a really good collaborative process. And the net result is we've got data in our district plan that is, you can trust the data, can't you? It's been well thought out.
Peer reviewed.
The modelling's been looked at. Other areas of the Wairarapa are not as lucky as we are. They're relying on desktop assessments for some of the hazard modelling. So we are lucky in our urban area. There's also areas where you just can't predict. You know, when you look at Cyclone Gabrielle and, you know, what has happened out at Flat Point, and that might be a result of just climate change as well, you know, combination of factors, heavy rain. You know, it was quite scary what happened out there, yet it's not identified. None of that area is identified in a flood zone. So you couldn't apply flood zone rules. If somebody came out and said, I want to do X, Y, Z, we can say, look, here's some photos of what we know has happened, but you can't apply flood hazard provisions if it's not identified as a flood hazard zone.
I'm just thinking about council may have to contribute into a catchment plan for the Mangatarere moving forward, and that funding is going to have to come from ratepayers. So it's just my thoughts around future developments that are associated, for instance, around the Mangatarere. Should they be protecting their, rather than it comes back onto council later on?
As I said, that's a blurred line as to where flood protection lies and what we can do under our legislation.
Because we still haven't dealt with the major emergency that Wellington Regional Council guys came and talked to us about 2 years ago, with that the Mangatarere gouging out the paddocks. Nothing's happened, is it?
No.
I thought at the time something had to happen.
I think they were just wanting Carterton to contribute. I think when we said no, they put it in the back burner again.
Thanks, so. Do we have any further questions? I think we have
Good report.
one recommendation. I think that's that we received the report. Thank you, Councillor Della. Seconder. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. So,
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
okay, our final item, I think, is a Karakia Whakamutanga. And do we have anyone like to do a closing karakia?
Over here.
Kia whakaaria te tapu, kia wātea ai te ara, kia tūriki whakatā ai, kia tūriki whakatā ai, aumie, Kia ora, everybody. I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.
Cheers.